This is another episode of Standup Comedy, your host and MC, celebrating 40-plus years on the fringe of show business. Stories, interviews, and comedy sets from the famous and not so famous. Here's your host and MC, Scott Edwards.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's show. I am so excited. I know I say that almost every week, but man, we are in for such a treat. This next gentleman is originally from Tennessee. I met him through Podfest in Orlando, and we had such a great connection. He was the CFO for the Comedy Store in Los Angeles. He actually did some stand-up comedy himself. He's an author with 2 books, one called Money Nerve, Navigating the Emotions of Money, and a really great series that helps children with finances called Darius Wants a Dog. He has his own podcast. We'll talk about that later. And ladies and gentlemen, he's even climbed Kilimanjaro. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Bob Wheeler.
Uh-oh. Love the applause.
They're standing ovation. I mean, you have done so much with your life, and climbing Kilimanjaro, I'm going to ask you about that later. We had a chance to connect at Podfest in Orlando just a couple weeks ago, and it's because you noticed in my profile I had gone to Christian Brothers High School, and we're both graduates of that fine institution.
Well, so here's the thing. I went to Rhodes College in Memphis, and not everybody, but a lot of people from Rhodes College all went to Christian Brothers. And so when I saw Christian Brothers, I went, oh, there's only one.
Right. Well, it's so funny because when I met you, I go, oh, wow, here's a guy from California. And no, you were from Memphis, where there's apparently a duplicate school, Christian Brothers. It is a large organization, and they do make and sell great brandy, by the way.
There you go. That's right.
But that was the connection, and I was so thrilled when you came up and introduced yourself, and then we got talking and found out that not only were we both podcasters, and thus we were at Podfest in Orlando, and Christian Brothers graduates, but that we had this kind of connection through the Comedy Store. Such a great career you've had. Tell me a little bit about how it all got started. I mean, did you start off in the comedy biz, or as a CPA? We should say you're a licensed CPA. How did the comedy come into your life?
Well, so I was doing stand-up comedy because it was cheaper than therapy. I was doing stand-up, and I wasn't telling anybody I was a CPA. It was a secret. Like, nobody can know. I'm just a comic. You got to be a comic when you're doing comedy. So a good friend of mine who's was recently on America's Got Talent and a whole bunch of other stuff. We'd gotten into doing comedy about the same time anyway. She told Mitzi apparently they were having some struggles, and I was running a show at the Comedy Store called Good Humor Bar. And Mitzi called me up and said, this is Mitzi Shore, and you got to come help out the store. We're in trouble. And I was like, no, I'm a comic. She's like, no, we need your help. And I was like, ugh. But all my friends were comics. There's 3 stages at the Comedy Store, and basically they had about $100,000 IRS tax lien for payroll taxes, and things had gotten a little unorganized and crazy at the club, and they were ready to shut the doors. And so I was like, okay, I got to help. And I jumped in, and because I have a CPA license, I convinced the bank to give us a line of credit. I convinced the IRS we had a payment plan, and we worked it all out. So I guess that was my foray into becoming the CFO at the Comedy Store, was helping them not close their doors back in 1997.
Wow, that's interesting. So
Sammy's the dad, and I opened for Sammy Shore a couple of times. Amazing guy. And then Peter, it was Mitzi's son, and Paulie and Scotty and Sandy were Sammy and Mitzi's kids.
Okay,
so I
had it all wrong.
I knew the whole family.
Well, when you jump in, and Mitzi was a powerful and could be challenging to work with woman, but she had a family that she was really good at taking care of. She had this dramatic financial situation. You were her white knight and came in and kind of saved the day. I'm sure that almost immediately built a bond of trust, which with Mitzi wasn't easy.
Yeah, I was really fortunate, and she trusted me implicitly, and we traveled together. I spent a lot of time with her. I really feel privileged to have gotten to get to know her very personally. And yeah, I mean, I remember one time actually, Paulie was mad at me because I got to sign the checks, she didn't, and he was like, "Mom, it's not fair. Bob signs the checks." And oh my God, this is horrible. She says to him, "Well, I trust Bob." And I was like, please don't say that. Like, but, fortunately I've gotten to know all the kids and be part of that family. And so it's been a huge privilege to be part of the store.
Well, let's take it back just a step. How long were you doing stand-up comedy? And I know that you're originally from Tennessee. Did you start there, or was it when you came out to the West Coast?
It's when I came out to the West Coast. I actually started doing improv first. I was doing sketch comedy and all that over at Acme Comedy Theater and the Groundlings and all that, and then decided to give stand-up comedy a run. So I started doing comedy probably in 1989, 1990. Mitzi was great because she made sure that I went down to San Diego and got my spots, and I got my spots at the store. Like, I didn't lose. I got to keep doing comedy. But I didn't tell anybody for years that I was the CFO, that I was signing the checks and stuff, because I just wanted to be a comic. But as things got busier and bigger, I did have to take on more responsibility, and stand-up sort of became secondary.
Well, you were in comedy quite a while, so you must have had some success. Were you touring and being a bit of a road comic, or were you pretty much, rooted in LA and worked the clubs just in that area?
Well, I did go on the road a little bit, did do some tours, and, and that was great. But I think I needed to be in LA. I wanted to be near the store. I like safety nets, and being in LA gave me that safety versus being a road comic. I think one thing for me is, growing up with not a lot of money in my family and things like that, I didn't have a safety net. And so there was a point where I feel like if I'd really just taken the plunge and just followed the comedy dream, that like things would have worked out. But financially, I would have been worried and stressed. And so, I feel like I chose the route that was actually better for me, which was still getting to do my comedy, but also being able to be rooted in LA and have the security of my tax practice and the Comedy Store sort of to financially hold me together.
Right. And reason I asked that was that I was still, running and booking my clubs up in Sacramento, and your name didn't cross my desk. I would have remembered, but that kind of makes sense that if you end up weaving a life together in LA and that involved with the Comedy Store, I think you made the right choice. I mean, both of us know comics that had, stellar careers and made millions, but it's like 0.5% of the people that we've seen come through the clubs. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I still see some of my friends living in apartments with 4 other roommates. And I'm glad I don't have that personally for me.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then the other thing that I find fascinating, and I don't mean to delve too deep into it, but the idea that Mitzi would lean on a comic that happened to have his CPA license to help her at such a delicate time. Now, I had a chance to interact with Mitzi a few times because we were peers in the business. Bud Friedman, her and I, and Bob Fisher, there was always a little bit of communication, but it was never friendly communication with Mitzi. It was always, it's kind of my way or the highway. And Bud was the same. I mean, we were all kind of in a power position. I was the weak link because being in Sacramento, I always, I tell everybody I was on the fringe of show business. I wasn't deep into it like these guys. But Mitzi was not an easy woman. Obviously, you built up a real trust and friendship. Once you got into her inner circle, how was that world?
Well, somebody once joked with Mitzi. They said, "Mitzi, you're actually a really nice person." She said, "Don't tell anybody." because here's the reality. I mean, look, if she liked you, she had a heart of gold. what comes to mind is one time we had a staff meeting on a Friday afternoon. I had $10,000 from petty cash from the bank. She asked me to run and do something. I ran upstairs. I was trying to find something. I came back 30 minutes later. Somebody had taken the cash, $10,000. And it was either a comic or an employee. And I said, Mitzi, somebody just stole $10,000. It was just sitting right here. She goes, that's okay. They must have needed it more than us. And I was like, what?
Wow.
We need it. And we had no money at that time. Like, we were just happy to cover checks, for comics. So she was, but she used to tell me that, like, look, some of the folks and Bud and all these people had it out for her in the beginning, and I was like, oh, you're probably imagining that. But I ended up running into some people, again, not telling them that I was the CFO at the Comedy Store. And, these people were definitely not Comedy Store folks. And they're like, we're going to have to take that woman out. I think because she was a woman.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of a sexist industry.
It is. And I went back to her. I was like, wow, Mitzi, you're right. There's a lot of people want to take you out of this business. So she had to be harsh. She had to be hard. And because everybody wanted to be her friend, everybody had an angle to get in. And, and I saw it because I was close with her. People would, hey, Bob, can I carry your briefcase and sit in on a meeting? Like, no. People wanted access to her, and she had to put up a wall.
Well, it's interesting, though, because she looked to you, a working stand-up comic, and you became her CFO and really saved the Comedy Store in a financial troubled situation. But I've also interviewed Lois Bromfield, who is a very old friend.
Yeah.
And there was a time that she was watching over her kids. So
yeah.
Mitzi really entangled her life with the performers that were working her store, which I find kind of surprising because in my 21 years of running clubs, I was always friendly and shared a lot of special moments with comics, but I didn't trust them as far as I could throw them.
Right. Yeah. No, Roseanne, when she went through her first divorce, stayed at the condo in La Jolla. Mitzi spent lots of money putting many comics through rehab multiple times. She had door guys and comics that would steal from the club. She'd still let them perform because at the end of the day, she felt like it was an artist colony for misfit comics, and she wanted them to have a home regardless. So she was pretty welcoming in that way, even when she probably shouldn't have been.
Yeah, and I think it's good for us to share because this podcast is all about stand-up comedy, and I've interviewed dozens of professional entertainers that even though Mitzi came across as kind of a tough broad, she had a huge heart for the people in the industry that she loved. And I think that that's important to say out loud because generally in the Hollywood, you don't always hear the nicest things about people like Mitzi or Bud,
right?
Because of the decisions they had to make. I mean, I was in an unimportant area up in Sacramento, and yet when I had to tell a comic, you're just not cutting it, or this isn't going to work for you as a career, it builds up a pretty quick animosity. And I can't imagine what Mitzi put up with in and day out.
Oh, absolutely. And, it's a club on Sunset Strip. The Tonight Show was booking all the comics from the Comedy Store. It had such visibility. Everybody wanted to be a part of it. And even if you're the worst comic at the Comedy Store, it's funny. I was traveling. I did a show in Atlanta, and some of these people were coming up to me telling me they're headliners, and I was being a little judgmental, going, "Really?" And I went back and I said, "Some of these folks, I can't believe they're headlining." And they said, "Bob, you could be the worst comic at the Comedy Store. You're still going to be in the top, upper echelons of comics because you're getting a real crowd. You're getting to perform at the top club and one of the top clubs." And so I feel really fortunate in that. But yeah, everybody was coming at her like side to side. But she also had a sense of humor. Years ago, Joe Rogan and this other comic got into a physical altercation at the club, sort of gotten into a wrestling match. And it was a female comic. And and she was a tough broad. And so after that happened, for the next 6 months, anytime the two of them performed at the club, she put them back to back. Joe first or and her second, or her first and Joe second. She made them follow each other for like 6 months. Just to learn to get along.
Tough love to teach them that they're in the same business and they have to learn to work together.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, you as a comic, can you, I don't know your comedy. I apologize, Bob. What was your style? Were you a monologist, prop comic? I mean, what sort of comedy did you do?
My humor's a bit dark, so it's self-deprecating and a little bit dark, pet value days kind of stuff. How much is my pet worth? It's sick. So I tend to go a little bit dry and dark, but it's a lot. It's like, I love it. I love it.
Well, you must have had some amazing experiences, basically living and working out of the store. I mean, we both could name dozens of incredible, talented people that came out of there. As a comic, not as a CPA, but as a comic, what do you feel working the store gave you or you came away with?
Well, it helped me realize that anything's possible. And I also think it helped me realize that comics are just people too. People hold them in such high esteem, and I, which is fair when they're up on stage killing. It's amazing. It's the best drug in the world when people are laughing, but they're also humans. And so I also got to see the tragic side of some of these brilliant people, mental health issues, struggling with just every day, because comedy is partially tragedy.
I mean,
drinking and drugs.
Yeah. I mean, what we've both seen, what that's done to people's lives. And you were right in the thick of it. Are there any kind of fun stories of people you've worked with or experiences that you shared at the store?
Well, I think one of the, this will sound weird, but one of the fun things that I got to do is E! Entertainment did a true Hollywood story on the Comedy Store, which they'd never done, like a building. And they brought in Gallagher and Cheech and Chong and all these people. And I got to hear like Gallagher talk about how he smashed his first watermelon, and it was supposed to be like a piece of squash or something. And they didn't have anything. And he did the watermelon, and Mitzi called him up. She's like, "I heard you squashed a watermelon on my stage." And he's like, "Oh crap." He's like, "Yes, ma'am, I did." And she's like, "Well, you better do it again. We're sold out." Stories like that. Or how Paulie used to let Sam Kinison, he'd leave the door open so Sam could sneak in and sleep in the club because he didn't have a place to sleep, And so getting to meet, George Carlin and Richard Pryor and just some of these people, it was just amazing to be in this world where reality and like celebrity fantasy all come together.
Yeah, I think it must have just been a little overwhelming from a artist point of view that it's funny because both of us were always around celebrities, so it doesn't have we don't have the same reaction as somebody that is not in the industry may have.
Right.
Yet at the same time, you were in this deep, deep well of talent where some of those people were just dripping with energy and talent, and some of that has to wash off. It must have made you a better comic.
I'm sure that it did. I remember one time I was watching somebody do a set, and they were really funny, and I was just watching them engaged, and another comic walked by, and they sort of hit me. I was like, "What?" And he goes, "You're a comic. Don't be in awe." Like, it's one of your peers. That's what you're. And I was like, "Oh, okay. Sorry."
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, because when somebody's doing magic, it's just amazing.
Right. When you're seeing something that so you're a stand-up comic, a monologist, and then you see a comic juggler, a comic magician, or somebody that takes our art form and twist it a little bit. It can be pretty inspiring that, wow, they took their comedy and they were able to do something totally different with it. I could see that.
Yeah. And I think being at the store and seeing people take risks, and I think the comics that are the most successful are the ones that are willing to fail. And then that worked, but I'm going to fail and I'm going to take a chance instead of like, I got to hold on to this material and it's got to get me through the day. No, all right, I'm letting that go. I'm trying something new. Always willing to cross the line or fall on their face.
That's so true. And I'm glad you said that because I think whether it's business, I'm an entrepreneur, or comedy, or even any of the art forms, if you're not willing to take a risk, you just become one of the many. You become the showgirl as opposed to the
Right.
star.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Comedy is risk.
Yeah, that is so fascinating. Well, you've done so much more. I mean, tell me a little bit, to tell my audience a little bit about what drove you to become an author. Your first book, Money Nerve, Navigating the Emotions of Money, sounds like a fascinating financial book, but I was really interested in the children's series, Teaching Kids About Money, Darius Wants a Dog. Those are two different and yet same styles of writing. What brought around that?
Well, interestingly enough, Comedy Store has played into everything. I was sitting in the Comedy Store main room one day, and a friend of mine, a comic, came in, and they were in tears. And they were saying, man, I'm such a loser. Everybody in my family is doctors, and everybody's a professional, and I chose to be a comic, and I just spent time with my family, and I'm so ashamed. And I said, you're not the only person that's chosen passion over profit. You're not the only person that's chosen the life of an artist. And they were like, what? And I'm like, what? I realized so many people are very alone in their financial journey, and that there's a lot of shame around our financial choices or following our passion and all that stuff. And so being around comics and being around artists just made me realize how all of us, most of us, have some financial shame or some financial secret we don't want anybody to find out. We got to present well. And so I wrote that book just because I wanted everybody to know, like, hey, you're not alone, and we've all got this emotional attachment to our money. It's just most of us are unconscious about it. So that was the first book.
Yeah, but I'm going to interrupt, Bob, and just say, well, that now explains the title, and it gives me a clear understanding. So navigating the emotions of money, it is so true that so many people tie your financial success into who you are, as opposed to just a medium to pay your bills. I think that's, I'm going to have to read that book. That's a great angle to approach humanity and money. I think that's brilliant, Bob. Thanks so much for even extrapolating and thinking that through and sharing it with people. That's quite a gift.
Well, thank you. It's funny. As a comic, we used to go out and have, or when I was doing sketch comedy, we'd go out after a show, and everybody would get tacos and drink a beer, and then everybody would scatter. And I was the only one that had a steady paycheck, so I ended up a lot of times picking up the extra.
Well, it was similar as a club owner. I always had a lot of, for those that don't know, comedy is a really terrific cash business. And I always had a wad of cash on me. And it was similar, that I felt very blessed that I could take care of those around me that I cared about. And that meant picking up the tab once in a while, if not all the time. But still, people and their relationship with money it's built up in our society, is so important. And one of the lessons, and I know this interview is about you, but I'm going to share a little bit about me. As an entrepreneur, I've had a lot of money at times, and I've been bankrupt a couple times. And you know what? The money never drove me. It was whatever my passion was at the time. And I feel like I've had a really full, interesting, and exciting life, but I'm not a millionaire, and I'm not broke. I ended up kind of in the middle, and I'm comfortable with that. But I think that is a challenge for most people. So your book, Money Nerve, Navigating the Emotions of Money, it just sounds perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the mixed messages. We all need to be multimillionaires to have this amazing life. And the reality is, if you've got great friends, you've got great relationships, you've had great life experiences, that's pretty wealthy to me. And I think we get confused. And so I think most of us are like, yeah, I've got to get that extra million or that 5 million or that, and then you're just chasing forever instead of actually stopping around and saying, wow, life's pretty amazing.
Yeah, kind of that whole stop and smell the roses thing. Well, now
Yeah.
but then you turned it. And again, Bob, I'm so impressed with your giving of or sharing of your talents and information through life's experiences. Doing a children's book involving financial situations. What brought that about? That sounds brilliant.
Well, as I was doing the podcast and I was talking to people and financial literacy and things that people would tell me as a kid what happened to them, and because I believe a lot of this stuff starts early when we're 4, 5, and 6, I realized, and God bless my parents, I'm not putting any blame on anybody, but I wasn't taught how to say, no, that doesn't work for me. Oh, let me think about it. If I made a choice, I had to stick with it, right? And so you chose carefully because you never got to undecide what you decided. And there were just basic things where I didn't understand. Oh, if I do this, I've got this responsibility. And so I thought, wouldn't it be great to just create a series of books with kids from different backgrounds, adopted, widowed parents, whatever it might be, to all just have life lessons, whether it's like starting a business or wanting a dog and what's involved with just something as simple as I want a dog. You got to pay for the vet.
Well, that's so funny because I'm not, this isn't a secret to anybody that knows me. I'm not a big pet person because to me it was food in and poop out. So I had figured out that there was work and a cost to having a pet, and most people think it's worth it. I don't. But it is interesting that in a series of children's books, you're able to educate on a very primary level some of the important tools that can really help you through life.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, a lot of parents just don't know how to have the conversation. So at the end of the book, there's prompting questions. Do you want to have a dog or a cat? What do you think it costs? How much does it cost to run the house? Like, where does money come from? These basic things where kids don't know this information, and they just have to trust that their parents are going to take care of them. So the more we can start to normalize conversations around money at an early age, so that it doesn't have to be, no, you can't have that toy, you're so greedy. No, we don't have money for that toy, or we do have money for the toy, but we're choosing to save it for a vacation, so that there's actually transparent, real conversations about why we do what we do.
I just think I wish that kind of stuff was around when I was raising my kids. I think it's also a little generational. I'm a lot older than you, Bob, but in my generation, and the generation before us, before me even, what they call the greatest generation ever, went through the Depression and some really hard times where money and earning money was you had to be so careful about it and work so hard for it. My generation, I felt like we were the early baby boomers. We were raised from the people that went through all that. And so we were kind of, you're going to have to earn your way. You're going to have to work your way. We're not going to give you anything.
Right.
And then you have the generations of recent decades where, for whatever reason, the parents go out of their way to provide everything and give everything. And like you said, without explanation, without rhyme or reason. And I believe those generations, it's kind of like everybody gets a trophy kind of thing, that they don't learn the efficiency of a good work ethic and the value of what they have. And that concerns me now that I'm in my senior years. That concerns me a little, but I think it's so smart that your books speak to that and get parents thinking about that. So ladies and gentlemen, please go out and find the series Darius Wants a Dog. I think that's just one of the titles. Is there a series? One. Is there a series name?
Yeah. It's Financially Fit Kids.
Oh, that's great. I like that. Financially Fit Kids. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have anybody under 15, go find those books.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Bob, that is such a great gift to share not only your first book and helping people, adults, deal with the emotional struggles of money, but a children's series to help teach those early skills is so incredible. Is this a natural thing for you to give back, or is someone tugging at you?
No, I think, it's funny. I went to a college where apparently now we're the number one college for doing community service and stuff like that. It was just always, I was in the Boy Scouts. I was always in church, always, how do you give back? Like, if I have something and I'm having privilege or being blessed with abundance, then it's my responsibility to help other people that may not be so fortunate. So I think that's just always been something that's been important to me, is to just give back and try and make a wider welcome for everybody, because not everybody got the same benefits.
Well, I think that's great, and thank you for explaining where that came from, because I feel like I've always been a generous person, but I don't do what you do. It wasn't bred in me. I take care of those around me, but I need to. I think my experience in giving back. I'm a Rotarian, and so as a Rotarian in a group, we give back to our community and to the world. But I'm just a minor participant. It's interesting that you picked that up in college. So many people come away from college with bad habits. It's great to hear that you had a good habit. What school? Tell everybody where you went to school.
So I went to Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee. It's a great private liberal arts college. And, they really challenged us to, challenge us intellectually, but also how are you going to show up in the world? And, I think I was really fortunate when I went to that college. Even before I got there, so many people believed in me. And even though my parents were going through divorce, life was crazy, but there are a lot of people that just stepped in and quietly helped pave the way for me for a lot of things that happened in my life. And so I can look back and say, wow, there were so many people that helped me that didn't have to. And so if I can pay that forward, in appreciation for those people giving me the love when things were really tough.
Wow, that is so great. Well, thanks for sharing that information. And of course, it all led to a field that you and I are both in, podcasting. And
yes.
I've been podcasting about 2.5 years, and mine's purely selfish. It's just sharing my love of stand-up comedy and pure entertainment. But your podcast, Money Should You Ask? I think
Money You Should Ask.
I think that's a great title. Money Should You Ask? Tell me how that came about and what you've been doing with that.
So I started out with another podcast called Funny Money with a friend of mine who is a financial advisor and a comic. And we did that for a couple of years. He wanted to be rich and famous immediately. That didn't happen. So he said, I'm out after 100 episodes, which it's funny with podcasting. That podcast is still growing in the rankings, even though we haven't done a new episode in 4 years. Yeah, I really enjoyed the medium. I wanted to just be able to keep having conversations around money, whether it's experts, whether it's super successful people, the head of Goldman Sachs, and just different people from all walks of life. I wanted to hear their stories and get it out there so that people listening could hear stories, because I think that's how we learn, we resonate with something and we say, oh, me too. Oh, wow, they did that. Oh, I can too. And so it was just a way to help people relate to money and not feel like it was such a daunting topic.
Well, it kind of goes along with your book. I mean, teaching people that there's lots of levels of success that have nothing to do with money, and that there's ways to manage your finances or money so that it works in congruency with your life, as opposed to being that battle for all the time. When did Money Should You... Boy, it's hard for me to say right off the bat. Money Should You Ask? When did that start?
So we started 5 years ago.
Wow, you've been around a while. How many episodes?
We've released 250, but I think we've recorded about 290.
Wow, that is so great. And it can be found on all platforms, Apple, Spotify, iHeart, all the usual, right?
All the usual. Lipsum, thank you.
Is it a weekly show?
It's a weekly show. We release once a week, and then occasionally we'll do a second podcast. Like we're going to release a special Podfest podcast. I went around and interviewed a ton of people at Podfest and got some great stuff. So putting that together. But yeah, it's once a week. It's out, and then the highlights of each episode go to YouTube, and we just try to get it out there that money's not so daunting, and it's all doable.
Oh, that's so great. And how smart of you to take advantage of Podfest and interview people. Chris had me, I was a quote unquote volunteer. I was working the whole time and there was a couple interviews I tried to get and it didn't happen, but I'm so glad that you were able to take advantage of that. And I can't wait to hear your special episode on that. Now, before we end this, I want to ask, why climb Kilimanjaro?
Why not? It's there.
It's there, right?
That's why we do these things, because it's there. Well, Kilimanjaro, here's the funny thing. I'm an accountant, so I have this mind. I have to be practical or get 2 or 3 things out of one trip. So when I went to Africa, I couldn't just be fun. I had to run a marathon and climb a mountain so that it was worth the trip. So I did something.
Well, you set goals for yourself that are obviously quite daunting. Kilimanjaro is not an easy climb. It's one of the highest mountains in the world and is one of those, like Everest. It's like a goal that only a certain section of people will set. So I'm very impressed. I think you're very smart and a little crazy.
And a little crazy. Probably a lot of crazy. That's why I'm a comic. That brings in the crazy.
Well, I just think it's been such a fascinating career, Bob, that starting off as a comic, saving the Comedy Store, working with Mitzi, going into authoring books and doing a podcast. Your whole life has been a series of saving and sharing, and you should be quite proud. I think that's for any person, let alone a stand-up comic, that is a real salute to who you are.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm incredibly grateful, and I still have copies of all the IRS liens back from the day. I saved them. I had to. Proof. But I'm very grateful. Very grateful.
Well, you know how some people collect autographs of celebrities. All those celebrities actually have your autograph on their checks.
That's right. That's right.
See,
that's right.
It's
Absolutely.
all a matter of perspective, right?
Exactly.
Well, Bob, this has been such a treat to have you on my podcast. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, make sure you check out his books, Money Nerve, Navigating the Emotions of Money, and Darius Wants a Dog's, say again, the financial fit system.
Financially fit kids.
Financially fit kids. I want to make sure we get that out there. Financially fit kids. And why wait? Start listening to Money Should You Ask, a podcast by Bob Wheeler that's available on all platforms, and you'll get a chance to learn and invest in somebody that has found the value of giving back to society, not only through his talent as a comic, but through his knowledge of finances. Bob Wheeler, thank you so much for being on the show.
Scott, thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, I'm interrupting the end of this podcast because we always like to share a little stand-up comedy. So here's a little fresh stand-up comedy by Bob Wheeler. Enjoy.
Does anybody watch TV? A little bit. It's going great. Right, reality TV. It's getting out of control, right? It started with Survivor, and then they had Dancing with the Stars, and now they've got this new one, So You Think You Can Dance. Right, they were previewing this new one for the fall. It's in a nursing home. It's called So You Think You Can Walk. Stop already. What's wrong? So, like BJ and a lot of other comics, we all have our other, little jobs. One of my other jobs is do a lot of commercials. Actually, let me rephrase that. I do a lot of auditions. My manager called me up, though, the other day. He was really excited. He's like, Bob, got this great print ad for you. Great print ad. Men's Health. Here's the before picture. Nice. And so I went down. Didn't book it, but, it's sad when you're not even good enough for the before picture. It's LA. It's LA. Oh, it's all right. I have a therapist. It's okay. You need one. But my other job, I'm an accountant. Yeah. Not funny, just information. Right? So, a lot of people were saying, hey, Bob, why don't you just give up the stand-up and just do the accounting, Maybe it's a little bit better. And I'm like, guys, although accounting is my passion, that's who I am. it's really the stand-up comedy that's paying all the bills. So I'll stick with that. You know, and the thing about accounting, like, see, I love accounting because, like, I get to hold other people's receipts, right? Ask really personal questions. $500 at Spago's? What's it like? It's rough. And the thing is, like, as an accountant, right, you know, you have to have this persona. You have to, like, keep your space, right? Which is cool, but, like, I was at the gym the other day, just finished a great workout, went to the locker room, grabbed a shower. I don't like mind the showers there. I don't mind being naked in front of people I don't know, right? Just in front of people that you do know. Like a client. Right? So I'm standing in the shower, I got a shampoo in my hair, and I see this guy staring at me. I'm a little paranoid, you know? And then I'm thinking, well, maybe he's just looking at the clock, right? But he's staring. He starts walking towards me, and I'm like, holy shit. Right? He's like, Bob? Yeah? Hey, it's Gil. It's Gil Fishman, your client. Hi. I'm like, what's up? Starts talking, he's like, hey, you know, how about those financial rates and stuff? I'm like, yeah. Right, so I'm standing there, I'm pretending to not notice that we're both standing there naked, right? And I'm standing there trying not to notice that he's looked there. Twice. And I'm thinking, you know, people shouldn't see their accountant's penis. I think accountants shouldn't see their client's penis. And I'm thinking, you may be able to claim that as a dependent. Actually, I've been trying to make some money that sort of combines my two passions, sex and accounting. Everybody's, right? It's this 976TA-XXX. Accounting hot talk. I want to crunch your numbers, baby. You want to do the 1040 easy or the long form? Would you like an extension with that? You haven't said in your receipts you've been banned. Call 976TA-XXX and let someone else besides Uncle Sam screw you.
That was Bob Wheeler, live on stage at the Comedy Store. Hey, thanks for listening to the interview and this little bit of comedy. We'll be back next week with another great show. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC. For information on the show, merchandise, and our sponsors, or to send comments to Scott, visit our website at www.standupyourhostandmc.com. Look for more episodes soon and enjoy the world of stand-up comedy. Visit a comedy showroom near you.